The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The break room felt smaller than it should. Marcus stood there, frozen, his lunch tray trembling in his hands. Every eye in that room was on him. Not the kind of attention anyone wants. The kind that burns. The kind that makes your stomach drop. His manager's voice still echoed in his ears. Loud. Mocking. Deliberate. Look at Marcus, everyone. Look at our employee of the month. Can't even get a simple order right. Maybe if he spent less time daydreaming and more time working, we wouldn't have to babysit him. The laughter came next. Not from everyone, but enough. Enough to make his face burn red. Enough to make him wish the ground would swallow him whole. He'd been working at the distribution center for 3 years of showing up early, 3 years of staying late, 3 years of nodding, of saying yes, of keeping his head down. And this was what it got him. Public humiliation over a mistake that wasn't even his fault. Marcus felt something shift inside him that day. Something quiet. Something dangerous. You know that feeling, don't you? That moment when you realize you've had enough. When every swallowed insult, every ignored effort, every dismissed complaint suddenly stacks up like a tower about to fall. When the voice in your head that always says, "Let it go," finally goes silent. That's where Marcus was standing. On the edge of something he couldn't take back. The thing about being pushed too far is you don't always see it coming. It builds slowly, day after day. Small cuts that never quite heal, till one day someone pushes just a little too hard. And you push back. This is the story of what happened when Marcus finally answered his boss. When the employee everyone ignored decided he was done being silent. When 3 years of pressure found its release. Before we continue, if you've ever dealt with an annoying boss like this, subscribe to the channel. But to understand what Marcus did, you need to understand how he got there. You need to see the pattern, the daily grind that wore him down, the small indignities that added up. Because what happened in that break room wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment everything became visible. The Riverside Distribution Center sat on the edge of town like a gray concrete box. No windows, no character, just walls and loading docks, and the constant beep of forklifts backing up. Marcus had worked there since he was 23. Now he was 26. Sometimes it felt like 30 years. His shift started at 6 in the morning. The building was always cold, even in summer. Something about the ventilation system that management never bothered to fix. Marcus would clock in, grab his scanner, and head to his section, Zone C, household goods. Everything from blenders to bedsheets. The work itself wasn't complicated. Scan the item, check the order, pack the box, tape it shut, send it down the line, repeat. 8 hours a day. Sometimes 10 when they were short-staffed, which was most days. His manager was a man named Derek Pullman, mid-40s, thinning hair he tried to hide with too much gel. The kind of guy who wore his title like armor, operations manager. He made sure everyone knew it. Derek had a routine. Every morning, he'd walk the floor with his clipboard. Not to help, not to check quality, just to be seen. To remind everyone he was in charge. He'd stop at random stations and watch people work, stand just close enough to make them nervous. Then he'd find something to criticize. "Marcus, those boxes need to be tighter. We're not paying you to waste tape. Marcus, you're 3 units behind your quota. Pick up the pace. Marcus, did you really think that package would survive shipping? Use your brain." It was never constructive, never helpful, just constant needling. A reminder that Derek could make his life difficult whenever he wanted. The other workers felt it too. Sarah in Zone B, Miguel on the loading dock, even Janet, who'd been there 15 years. Everyone had a Derek story. Everyone knew the feeling of being called out for no reason, of having their work dismissed, of being treated like they were lucky to have a job. But Marcus seemed to get it worse. Maybe because he was quiet, because he didn't push back. Derek sensed that. Predators always do. They find the person least likely to make waves and turn them into an example. If this feels familiar, hit the like button. Lunch breaks were supposed to be 30 minutes, but Derek had a habit of interrupting them. He'd walk into the break room with some urgent task, something that absolutely couldn't wait, something that just happened to fall on Marcus's plate. "Marcus, I need you to recount the inventory in Zone C. Someone messed up the numbers, and I'm betting it was on your shift. I'm on break, Derek, and I'm asking you to do your job. Unless you'd rather I write this up as insubordination." There was never a real choice. Marcus would put down his sandwich and head back to the floor. By the time he finished the recount, his break was over. He'd work the rest of his shift hungry. This happened at least twice a week. The worst part wasn't the extra work. It was the randomness. Marcus could never predict when Derek would target him. Some days, he'd go unnoticed. Other days, Derek would find him 5 times in an hour. It kept Marcus on edge, always tense, always waiting for the next criticism. At night, Marcus would go home to his small apartment. 1 bedroom, a couch he'd bought second-hand, a TV that only got basic channels. He'd heat up something frozen and try to decompress. But the tension followed him. He'd lie in bed replaying Derek's comments, thinking of things he should have said, responses he'd never actually use. His girlfriend, Jen, noticed the change. She'd known him since high school. Back then, Marcus used to laugh more, used to make plans, used to talk about what he wanted to do with his life. Now he mostly just talked about work, about Derek, about how exhausting it was to get through each day. "Why don't you quit?" she'd asked him more than once. "And do what? Jobs aren't exactly falling from the sky. At least this one has benefits." Benefits? As if that made up for everything else. As if health insurance was worth the daily humiliation. But Marcus was practical. He'd grown up without much. His mom had worked 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. He'd learned early that you don't walk away from steady income. You put your head down. You endure. You survive. So that's what he did, day after day, week after week, enduring Derek's management style, surviving the constant pressure, telling himself it would get better. It didn't. The incidents started piling up, small at first, then bigger, each one leaving a mark Marcus tried to ignore. There was the time Derek reassigned Marcus's parking spot, the one close to the entrance that Marcus had been using for 2 years. Derek gave it to a new hire, said it would help with morale. When Marcus asked why, Derek just shrugged. "Company property. I decide who parks where. You got a problem with that?" Marcus bit his tongue, walked the extra 100 yards from the far lot every morning, in the rain, in the heat. Because that's what you do when you can't afford to lose your job. Then there was the performance review. Marcus had been expecting it to go well. His numbers were solid. His error rate was below average. He'd even volunteered for weekend shifts when they were understaffed. Derek sat across from him in the tiny office. Didn't look up from the paperwork. "Marcus, I'm marking you as needs improvement across the board." "What? My numbers aren't everything. It's about attitude, initiative, leadership qualities. You don't demonstrate those. I volunteered for every extra shift you—" "That's not initiative. That's just doing what you're told. If you want to advance here, you need to show me you can think bigger. Has something like this ever happened to you? Tell me in the comments." The rating meant no raise that year. It meant getting passed over when a supervisor position opened up. Derek gave that job to someone who'd been there 6 months, someone who laughed at his jokes, someone who didn't question anything. Marcus felt the anger building. Not the hot, explosive kind, the cold kind, the kind that settles in your chest and hardens over time. He started noticing everything Derek did, every little abuse of power, every double standard. Derek would leave early most days, clock out at 3:30 even though his shift ran until 5. But if anyone else tried that, he'd write them up. He'd take supplies from the warehouse, tape, pens. Once Marcus saw him load a brand-new desk fan into his car. Company property. Nobody said anything. The rules applied to everyone else. Never to Derek. One afternoon, Marcus made a suggestion during a team meeting. They'd been having issues with the inventory system, items getting marked as missing when they were just misplaced. Marcus had noticed a pattern, a simple fix that would save everyone time. What if we added a secondary scan checkpoint at the— Derek cut him off. Marcus, we have procedures for a reason. You think you're smarter than the people who designed this system? Just stick to your job and let management handle the thinking. The room went quiet. A few people looked down at their hands. Marcus felt his face burn. He'd been trying to contribute, and Derek had shut him down like he was an idiot. That night, Marcus barely slept. He kept replaying the moment. The dismissive tone, the way Derek had made him feel small in front of everyone. He thought about quitting, about walking in the next morning and just leaving, but then reality crept back in. Rent was due in 2 weeks. His car needed new brakes. His mom's birthday was coming up. He couldn't afford to be unemployed. Not even for a little while. So he went back, and Derek was waiting. It became a game to Derek, pushing just a little harder each time, seeing how much Marcus would take, how far he could bend before breaking. Marcus, you're going to stay late tonight. Jenny called in sick and someone needs to cover her zone. I already worked 10 hours today. Then it'll be 12. Unless you'd rather explain to corporate why we missed our shipping deadline. Marcus stayed. He always stayed. Because what choice did he have? But something was changing inside him. The cold anger was growing, filling spaces he didn't know existed. He started having fantasies, not violent ones, just justice. Derek getting called out, getting fired, getting exposed for the petty tyrant he was. Marcus imagined walking into the HR office with documentation of everything Derek had done. Imagined the look on Derek's face when he realized his behavior had consequences. Imagined how good it would feel to finally speak up. But he never did. Because people like Derek always seemed to survive. They always had excuses. They always knew how to redirect blame. And people like Marcus, they just kept their heads down till they couldn't anymore. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Marcus had been up late the night before. His upstairs neighbor had been playing music until 2 in the morning. He'd gotten maybe 4 hours of sleep. He'd shown up to work exhausted but functional, ready to get through another day. Derek found him before his first break. Marcus, we have a situation. There's a major order going out today. Clients expecting 300 units by end of shift. I need you on it, all day, no breaks. Derek, I'm already running Zone C. Who's going to— I'll figure it out. You're my most reliable worker. Can't trust anyone else with something this important. It almost sounded like a compliment. Almost. Except Marcus knew better. This wasn't about trust. This was about pushing the one person who wouldn't push back. Using reliable as code for easy to exploit. Marcus worked through lunch, worked through his afternoon break. His back ached. His feet throbbed. By hour 7, he was running on fumes. But the order got done. 300 units. Packed. Scanned. Ready for shipping. He found Derek at the loading dock. It's done. Derek glanced at his watch. Cutting it close, weren't you? That's all he said. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just a subtle dig implying Marcus had barely met expectations. After 11 straight hours of work. After skipping meals. After doing Derek's job for him. Marcus walked back to the break room. Sat down in the corner. Felt the exhaustion wash over him. Felt something else, too. A clarity he hadn't felt in months. A simple truth settling into place. This wasn't going to stop. Derek wasn't going to change. The job wasn't going to get better. And Marcus was done pretending it would. He didn't know what he was going to do yet. But he knew he couldn't keep living like this. Couldn't keep swallowing his dignity. Couldn't keep being Derek's punching bag. Something had to give. And soon, it would. The next morning started like any other. Marcus clocked in at 6. The building was cold. The lights hummed. The same routine he'd followed 1,000 times before. But today felt different. He felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like he'd already made a decision without fully realizing it. Derek was in early too. He usually wasn't. But there was some corporate visit scheduled. Regional management coming through to inspect operations. Derek loved days like this. Opportunities to perform. To act like the hard-working leader he pretended to be. Marcus went to his station, started his work, tried to stay invisible. If he could just get through this day quietly, maybe Derek would focus his energy elsewhere. That hope lasted until 9:30. Derek's voice echoed across the warehouse floor. "Marcus, my office, now!" Every head turned. People stopped working for just a second. Long enough to register that Marcus was being called out. Again. The attention made his skin crawl. He walked to the small office Derek used, really just a converted storage room with a desk and a door. Derek was already sitting, looking at his computer screen. "Close the door." Marcus did. "I reviewed yesterday's numbers. Your zone was down 18% in processing speed. I wasn't in my zone yesterday. You had me working the special order, remember? I'm talking about the week overall. You're slowing down, getting sloppy." Marcus felt heat rising in his chest. "My error rate is 0.3%. That's better than—" "I don't care about error rates. I care about efficiency. And yours is dropping. So here's what's going to happen. You're going on a performance improvement plan. 30 days. If you don't hit quota every single day, we'll have to reconsider your employment." The words hit like a punch. A performance improvement plan. Everyone knew what that meant. It was the first step toward firing someone. A paper trail. A way to build a case. "This isn't fair. I've been covering extra shifts, doing everything you—" "Fair?" Derek leaned back in his chair. Smiled. Not friendly. Something else. "Marcus, fair is what I say it is. You work for me, not the other way around. If I say you're underperforming, you're underperforming. Now get back to work. And think about whether you really want to keep pushing back on this." Marcus left the office. His hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Pure, crystallized rage. Derek was setting him up to fail. Making it impossible to succeed. And there was nothing he could do about it. He tried to focus on his work. Check, pack, repeat. But his mind was spinning. 30 days. Every single day hitting quota. With Derek sabotaging him at every turn. Interrupting his work. Reassigning tasks. Finding reasons to slow him down. It was a trap. And they both knew it. If you like stories like this, subscribe for more. Lunch came. Marcus went to the break room. He'd brought leftover pasta from home. Nothing fancy. Just something to get him through the day. He sat at his usual table in the corner. Tried to eat quietly. Tried to be invisible. Then Derek walked in. He wasn't alone. He'd brought two of the regional managers, giving them a tour, showing them the facility, being the perfect host. And this is our break room, where our team recharges. We believe in work-life balance here. Happy workers are productive workers. The regional managers nodded, looked around. One of them noticed Marcus. "Morning. How's it going?" Marcus looked up, forced a smile. "Fine, thanks." Derek stepped closer, looked at Marcus's lunch, then at Marcus. That smile again, the one that meant trouble. "Actually, while we're here, let me give you an example of the kind of challenges we face with some employees." Marcus's stomach dropped. "No, not here. Not now." Marcus here is a perfect example. Works hard when he wants to. But consistency is an issue. Just this morning, I had to put him on a performance plan. Sometimes people just don't have what it takes to keep up with our standards. The room went silent. Other workers at nearby tables stopped eating, stopped talking. Everyone was watching now. One of the regional managers looked uncomfortable. "Well, I'm sure—" "No, it's important to be honest about these things," Derek continued. "We can't let personal feelings get in the way of maintaining excellence. Right, Marcus? You understand why this is necessary?" Marcus stared at his pasta. His face burned. His heart pounded. Every person in that room was looking at him, judging him, wondering what he'd done wrong, why he wasn't good enough. Derek had done this on purpose, humiliated him in front of corporate, made him an example, a cautionary tale, all while pretending to be the concerned manager making tough decisions. And in that moment, something inside Marcus snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. That voice that had always told him to keep his head down, to endure, to survive, it went quiet, replaced by something clearer, something certain. He was done. Marcus looked up from his pasta, met Derek's eyes, didn't look away. The smile on Derek's face faltered. Just for a second, because something in Marcus's expression had changed. The usual deference was gone, replaced by something Derek didn't recognize. "Actually, Derek," Marcus said, his voice steady, "since we're being honest in front of corporate, let's be completely honest." Derek's jaw tightened. "Marcus, I don't think— I've worked here 3 years." Marcus stood up. Not aggressive, just standing. 3 years of showing up early, staying late, covering shifts when people called in sick, volunteering for overtime, doing everything you asked without complaint. The regional managers exchanged glances. Other workers had stopped pretending not to listen. The whole room was holding its breath. "And in those 3 years, you've made it your personal mission to make my life miserable. Not because I'm a bad worker. My numbers prove that. But because I'm an easy target. Because I don't fight back." "That's enough," Derek said, his face reddening. "You're way out of line." "No, Derek. For once, I'm exactly where I need to be." Marcus's voice didn't rise, didn't shake. It was calm, almost eerily calm. "You put me on a performance plan this morning for having a down week. A week where you pulled me off my regular duties to handle a rush order. An order that I completed perfectly, on time, without a single error." One of the regional managers started to say something, but Marcus continued. "Last month, you gave me a needs improvement rating on my review. Said I lacked initiative, but I've made suggestions in meetings. Ideas that could improve efficiency, save the company money. You shut me down every single time. Why? Because accepting a good idea from me would mean admitting I have value beyond being someone you can push around. What would you have done in that moment? Let me know, below." Derek's face was fully red now. "You need to stop talking, right now. You reassigned my parking spot to a new hire. You interrupt my breaks with urgent tasks that somehow only I can handle. You leave early almost every day, but write up anyone else who tries it. You've taken supplies from the warehouse. I've seen it. Other people have seen it. But nobody says anything because you make sure everyone knows what happens to people who speak up. You make examples out of them. The break room was dead silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed loud. And today, you decided to humiliate me in front of corporate, to use me as your prop, your example of what happens when someone doesn't kiss your ass enough. Well, congratulations, Derek. You finally pushed too far. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, set it on the table. For the past 6 months, I've been documenting everything. Every time you've left early, every supply you've taken, every task you've assigned me outside my job description without proper compensation, every time you've interrupted mandatory breaks, every harassment, every double standard, every abuse of authority. Derek's eyes went wide. You can't. I can. And I have. It's all time-stamped, dated, cross-referenced with company policy. I even have voice recordings of some of our conversations. Did you know you called me an idiot last Tuesday? Called Sarah lazy on Wednesday? Told Miguel he was lucky to have a job at all because people like him are a dime a dozen? One of the regional managers stepped forward. Is this true? Derek stammered. He's making things up. He's disgruntled. You can't trust. I also have statements, Marcus continued, from other workers, people who were tired of watching you abuse your position, who wanted someone to finally say something. They were just waiting for the right moment. Guess this is it. He looked at Derek, really looked at him, saw the panic setting in, the realization that his carefully constructed authority was crumbling. I don't want your job, Derek. I don't want revenge. I just want you to know that you don't get to treat people like this anymore, that your little kingdom is over, that someone finally stood up and said enough. The regional manager closest to Marcus spoke carefully. Sir, I think we need to have a conversation. Would you be willing to share that documentation with HR? I already sent it, Marcus said, last night, to HR, to corporate, and to the State Labor Board. Because what Derek's been doing isn't just wrong. Some of it's illegal, unpaid overtime, break violations, hostile work environment. It's all there. Derek looked like he might be sick. The color had drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Marcus picked up his phone, put it back in his pocket, looked around the break room at all the faces staring at him. Some shocked, some impressed, some scared. I'm going back to work now, he said. My break's almost over anyway. And unlike some people here, I actually do my job. He picked up his lunch container, walked past Derek, past the regional managers, toward the door. As he reached it, he stopped, turned back, looked at Derek one last time. Oh, and Derek, that performance plan you put me on this morning? I'd start worrying about your own performance instead. Then he left. The break room stayed silent for a full 10 seconds. Then the whispers started. Then the phones came out. Then someone started laughing. Not at Marcus, at the look on Derek's face. At the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. The quiet guy. The one who never fought back. The one everyone thought would just take it forever. He'd finally answered. The rest of the shift was surreal. Marcus went back to Zone C, scanned items, packed boxes, did his job exactly as he always had. But everything felt different. Lighter. Like he'd been carrying a weight for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. People kept walking by, co-workers he barely knew. Some gave him nods. Some gave him quiet smiles. Sarah from Zone B found him during the afternoon break. I can't believe you did that. Neither can I, Marcus admitted. I really can't believe it. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do here. Derek's been a nightmare for years and everyone just accepted it. You didn't. I was tired of accepting it. She hesitated. Then, I was one of the people who gave you a statement. I hope that's okay. You asked for them 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't sure if you'd really go through with it, but I wanted to help if you did. Marcus looked at her. How many people did I ask? I don't know about everyone, but I know at least 8 of us sent you something. Stories, incidents, dates. We all had them. 8 people. Marcus had thought maybe 2 or 3 would respond. But 8. That was almost a third of the day shift. Derek had pissed off more people than Marcus realized. What do you think happens now? Sarah asked. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe HR buries it. Or maybe they don't. Maybe for once, someone actually faces consequences. Marcus wanted to believe that. But he'd worked long enough to know that middle managers like Derek usually found ways to survive. They had friends in the right places. They knew how to spin narratives. They knew how to make problems disappear. But even if Derek somehow kept his job, something had changed. The illusion of his power was shattered. Everyone had seen him speechless. Everyone had watched him scramble. He'd never have the same authority again. If this felt satisfying, subscribe now. By 4 o'clock, the rumors had evolved. Someone said Derek had been escorted off the property. Someone else said he was in the regional manager's office being interrogated. Another person claimed he'd already been fired. Marcus didn't know what was true. Didn't really care. He'd done what he needed to do. The rest was out of his hands. At 5, he clocked out. Walked through the parking lot to his car in the far space Derek had reassigned him to. As he reached it, he saw something that made him stop. Derek's car was still there, but Derek wasn't in it. He was sitting on the curb next to it, head in his hands. Marcus could have walked past, should have walked past. But something made him pause. Derek looked up. His eyes were red. His gel-slicked hair was messed up from running his hands through it. I'm suspended, Derek said. His voice was hollow. Pending investigation. They went through my computer, found all the early clockouts, the supply requisitions that never went through proper channels, the emails where I talked about employees in ways I shouldn't have. Marcus didn't say anything. They're probably going to fire me. My wife doesn't know yet. My kids don't know. I don't know how I'm going to tell them. Part of Marcus felt satisfaction. This was what Derek deserved. This was justice. But another part, a smaller part, felt something else. Not quite putty, but an awareness that Derek was still human. Still someone with a life that was about to fall apart. You did this to yourself, Marcus said quietly. Not today. Every day. Every time you chose to be cruel instead of fair. Every time you abused your authority. Every time you made someone feel small because it made you feel big. Derek looked at him. You were always such a pushover. I never thought you had it in you. Neither did I. What happens now? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. I guess we both find out. He got in his car, started the engine, drove away. In his rearview mirror, he could see Derek still sitting on the curb. A man who'd spent years building a reputation on fear and control. Now, completely alone. Marcus drove home, parked, sat in his car for a few minutes, processed everything that had happened. Then he pulled out his phone, called Jen. Hey, she answered. How was work? Different, he said. Really different. I'll tell you when I get inside. You sound weird. Good weird or bad weird? Marcus thought about it. Good, I think. Good. He got out of the car, walked up to his apartment. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel that knot in his stomach, that dread about tomorrow. that certainty that nothing would ever change. Maybe it wouldn't last. Maybe Derek would find a way to retaliate. Maybe corporate would protect him. Maybe Marcus would face consequences he hadn't anticipated. But right now, in this moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt free. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the same break room, same fluorescent lights, same humming refrigerator. But nothing felt the same. Derek was gone. Actually gone. The investigation had uncovered more than anyone expected. Years of policy violations, systematic harassment, misuse of company resources. HR had no choice but to terminate him immediately. No severance, no references, just a quiet removal and a company-wide email about leadership changes. They'd brought in a new manager. Her name was Patricia. She was older, calm, and seemed genuinely interested in how things actually ran. Her first week, she'd spent most of her time listening, asking questions, taking notes. She didn't pretend to know everything, didn't need to prove her authority. It was jarring how much better things felt. Marcus's performance plan had been canceled. Patricia had reviewed his file, compared it to his actual work output, and declared it completely unwarranted and frankly concerning that it was issued in the first place. She'd given him a formal apology on behalf of management, even restored his old parking spot. But more than that, the entire culture of the warehouse had shifted. People spoke up now, made suggestions, reported problems without fear. It was like the whole building had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled. Sarah got promoted to a supervisor position. Miguel started training new hires. Janet, who'd been there 15 years, finally submitted that process improvement proposal she'd been sitting on. It got approved. As for Marcus, he was still in Zone C, still scanning and packing, still doing the same basic work. But it felt different. It felt like just a job, not a daily battle, not a test of endurance, just work. He'd thought about leaving, thought about finding something better. But Jen had pointed out something important. You didn't just stand up for yourself, you changed things for everyone there. That matters. She was right. Walking away now would feel like leaving something unfinished. One afternoon, Marcus was finishing his shift when Patricia found him. Got a minute? Sure. She handed him a folder. I wanted you to see this before it goes out officially. Corporate reviewed the statements you and others provided. They're implementing new policies, better reporting structures for harassment, third-party review of manager conduct, training on workplace respect. A lot of this is directly because of what you documented. Marcus flipped through the pages, saw his words reflected in policy changes, saw the experiences he and his co-workers had endured being turned into protections for future employees. This is going company-wide, Patricia continued. Every facility, every department. They're calling it the Marcus Protocol internally, though it'll have a different official name. He looked up. The Marcus Protocol? Someone in corporate has a sense of humor. But you forced them to take this seriously, to acknowledge these problems exist and do something about them. That's not nothing. After she left, Marcus sat in his car, looked at the folder, thought about Derek sitting on that curb 3 weeks ago, thought about all the days he'd almost quit, almost given up, almost convinced himself that nothing would ever change. Change was hard. Change was scary. Change required risk. But change was possible. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Drinks after work Friday? Celebrating my promotion. You better come. Marcus smiled. Texted back. I'll be there. He started his car. Drove home. Same route he always took. Same apartment building. Same life, mostly. But he felt different inside. Stronger. More certain. Like he'd discovered something about himself he didn't know was there. He'd been pushed to his limit. And instead of breaking, he'd pushed back. Not with violence, not with cruelty, just with truth, with documentation, with the courage to finally say, enough is enough. That's the thing about standing up for yourself. It's not always dramatic. It's not always a big speech or a grand gesture. Sometimes it's just refusing to accept unacceptable behavior. Sometimes it's documenting the truth. Sometimes it's finding your voice after years of silence. And sometimes, when you stand up, other people stand up with you. Because they were waiting for someone to go first. Someone to prove it could be done. Someone to show them it was worth the risk. Marcus had been that someone. He pulled into his parking spot, grabbed his lunch container from the passenger seat, headed up to his apartment. Jen was already there, making dinner. "How was your day?" she asked. "Normal," he said. And he meant it. Normal was good. Normal was what he'd been fighting for all along. That night, he slept better than he had in years. No anxiety about tomorrow. No dread about what Derek might do. No knot in his stomach. Just peace. And the knowledge that when it mattered most, he'd found the courage to stand up. Not just for himself, but for everyone who'd been too afraid to speak. For everyone who thought nothing would ever change. For everyone who'd ever been pushed too far by someone with too much power. He'd shown them it was possible. And that, more than anything else, was worth celebrating. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps these stories coming, because everyone deserves to work with dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. And everyone deserves to know that speaking up, even when it's terrifying, can make a real difference. Sometimes the person who seems weakest is actually the strongest. They're just waiting for the right moment. Marcus found his moment. Maybe you'll find yours too.